Yes, sir. Oh, microphone, right.
I may have missed out on this, but it seems to me that there's a brand of Islam in the U.S., African American Islam, that predates all of this concern about terrorism, like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar changing his name, that kind of thing. And I have not heard of any association between African American Islam and terrorism. And I'm just wondering, does that group get caught up in this net, or is this investigation focused entirely on Islam with a Middle Eastern connection? And what is the connection between African American Islam and Middle Eastern Islam regarding all of this stuff?
I mean, it's obviously all one religion, and I think what NYPD is doing is they're looking at anyone who's practicing Islam, regardless, what sort of race you are. And as far as, the Nation of Islam, there's that is one thing, but there have been plenty, Black Americans who have converted and who have taken on the Salafi form of Islam and this sort of jihadi path, and that's, I don't know that they associate themselves with a specific group at all. They're just, focused on Islam being this very violent form.
Right. But they're particularly in prisons. The NYPD is very concerned about people who converted in prisons, particularly African American men who converted in prisons, were radicalized in prisons, and then would go out. And that
just hasn't borne out.
Right.
I mean, that just hasn't.
As far as an attack goes, I mean.
So you did report that they were spying on, targeting over 250 mosques, right? So these would have been, even some of them would have been
right.
An African American, strictly no Middle Eastern mosque in Harlem or something, right?
Right.
And they were included.
Oh yeah.
And let's, I mean, look, and one of the reasons, as Eileen talked about how it's not a monolithic Muslim community. As a civil rights group, Muslim communities are relatively young. This is sort of a relatively new phenomenon. The ideas of these communities acting in their interests as far as civil rights goes. It's not a new phenomenon for the Black community. And when we started reporting about infiltration of mosques in Newark, where the majority of the Muslims in Newark, to our understanding, are actually African-American Muslims, there's a much greater outcry and a much more organized outcry, because you're not talking about Arab Muslims and this sort of new immigrant Arab civil rights issue. You're talking about you're engaging right into the Black community of Newark with a very well-established, experienced, politically savvy civil rights and political operation. And so I think that's part of the reason why it was Newark, and it really just caught fire when we wrote that story.
Mm-hmm. Another question before we break? Yes, sir. Good job, guys. Was that your wife and son?
First of all, congratulations, well-deserved prize. Matt, I want to follow up on something that you mentioned about the debate about the merits of this and having that out in the open. I'm curious as to what sort of pushback you got from the NYPD to not go with this story on Homeland Security grounds, and then what type of conversations went on at AP, within AP, about whether or not you should actually go forward with this as a way to potentially compromise security.
I don't remember them ever actually even making that argument. I mean,
well,
I think
NYPD said that everything was wrong. They said the demographics unit didn't exist, and then we ran a story with a document that had the demographics unit seal. So then, I mean, it was just sort of.
And then we started publishing
story.
Demographics unit document
right.
labeled demographics.
And they renamed
unit.
it. That's so it just they came out and said everything was wrong, and then they're sort of backpedaling and.
Right. Their initial response was not that, yes, we're doing it, it jeopardizes things. It was, no, we're not doing that. You're wrong. Your story is marked by outright fiction. This is wrong. And then once that was the story they were locked into, and we just sort of went through and started documenting it with documents and more sources, I think there was a few instances where they said, oh, the document you released could have compromised an investigation, but I don't think they ever, I think their PR campaign had been pushed back on their heels a little bit as far as ever getting to the point to say, yeah, look, you're going to jeopardize that. That's a conversation, if you're going to have it, you got to have it right off the bat. And they picked a different strategy.
I'm interested in the question, it sort of follows on Megan's question too, as when you took this to your editors for the first time and said, look, here's what we heard about, here's what we like to do, did you get any pushback there saying, no, this is, stay away from this?
No. I mean, they love this story. I mean,
yeah, Michael, we'll get the microphone to you.
I'm wondering if there's any precedent in the history of the NYPD for doing this kind of intelligence gathering, either in other cities or overseas, either from the early Cold War, the anti-war movement, fighting international drug traffic in the city, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
do you want to talk about it?
There you
All right. In the 50s, 60s, early part of the 70s, the NYPD, like the FBI, had red squads and was using their intelligence division to infiltrate political groups, civil rights groups, photograph protests, keep files on civil rights leaders, as was the style of the time. And once that sort of came to light, there was a lawsuit, landmark lawsuit, class action lawsuit, and it was a Hanshu versus City of New York. And as part of that, a judge said, they came to an agreement, a settlement, a consent decree, where they said, all right, look, you promise not to spy on political activities, and you're not going to maintain any documents, and you're not going to infiltrate these groups, and you're not going to do this unless it has a super high standard, and it has to be reviewed by this outside board, and all of this stuff. And that basically castrated the intelligence division. It was on ice for 2 decades. It was nothing but a glorified chauffeur service. 9/11 happens. They immediately went to the judge and they were like, we need to scale back those rules. We need the ability to do this. It was post 9/11. The judge said, okay. They got rid of the oversight board. They lowered the standard from whatever was probable cause to reasonable suspicion, and suddenly the intel division was back in business.
Yeah. I'm going to take advantage of the chair here for a quick question and then a comment. Do you know, are they using drones?
I don't think so. Do you? I don't.
Is
NYPD using drones?
Not that we're aware of.
No. I mean, I don't have any
just
reason.
Wait is my count. Wait, just wait. Because this is, I know you know this is ongoing.
Right.
There have been stories recently now. There are police departments around the country that are applying for the permits, and the FAA has been told by Congress to make it easier for police departments to get drones. So that what's happening in Pakistan, maybe not armed with missiles, but drones certainly are going to be used by domestic police departments soon, if not already.
Well, Ray Kelly told 60 Minutes that the NYPD has the ability, the capability, and the authority to shoot down airplanes. So,
Which is news to a lot of
which was
people.
news to people in the federal government,
Like NORAD.
like the people who get paid to shoot down airplanes for a living.
Like next time you take the shuttle to LaGuardia, you might. The other comment I have is when I started in television at KABC in Los Angeles in 1980, there was a local television station. There was an investigative reporting unit, and there were 10 reporters in it. And when I left 9 years later, there was no investigative reporting unit, and there were obviously no reporters in it. And it is, I think, very regrettable across the nation that newspapers, with budget cuts and everything, TV stations, radio stations, the first thing to go is investigative reporting. I think tonight we see how important it is that the reporters who are just able to go unleashed and go out and hunt and find and report, and without that we would all be we would not be well served. And so I find it really refreshing tonight that AP has continued that and let you guys get into this story, and I really, really value and applaud you for your great work. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Great.
Thanks for coming. All right, we'll see you with Kathleen Sebelius next month.
So much.